talking about that book, so many people would come up to me and tell me that they had the same experience with their grandmother, their aunt, or their parents. So I thought that there was really a lot more to this, and it was a way of passing down these values from generation to generation, and that's something that we don't have as much of because people are busy, everybody's working. So, but it doesn't really take. That's one of the great things about poetry is that some of the greatest ones are short, and they're not all like the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. So and kids can come to them, even kids who don't like to read. So I did one for children, a family of poems, and then I did another one, Poems to Learn by Heart, because I was working with students in New York City and who were doing spoken word competitions and poetry slams and all of that, and so I really saw how this is not just a kind of a solitary thing, but it's really a group activity now, and allowing students to develop their voice by writing their own poems. I think it's becoming obviously such a powerful art form here, and so I then started a teleconference poetry sharing between kids in Japan and the South Bronx and Korea and then the Philippines we now have. So we have a 4-country poetry slam going on every few weeks, and then we try to get together once a year at the end of the year, but it's been a lot of fun, and it's really fascinating to see all these kids from around the world write about whether it's what they're going through, whether it's friendship struggles or family or faith or their history or their legacies or their countries or wartime or migration. So I think that's been a way of keeping that alive. And then I did one for women because I kept women were the ones who were always coming and telling me about how much they love poetry. They were writing poetry, and so it seemed like that would be a good idea. And there's so many great poems that speak to the different stages of a woman's life in particular.
It's gratifying to hear you talk about poetry this way, because I really think that it's one of the things when I think of the vulgarization of culture today. We don't really do poetry anymore. I mean, when you think of the poems that are in the New Yorker, for example, I can't take them seriously, and forgive me, but I feel like there's a whole new genre of poems written for people who are in MFA programs or who edit little magazines or something like that. And the idea of poetry as something that we do as a culture, that everyone does, has kind of gone away. And
except in spoken word.
Right. I was just going to say, you just mentioned that, and that is very interesting to me. But what happens? Does it get anthologized? Do people memorize it? I guess it doesn't really, right?
Well, I think it's starting to, and I think it's getting a whole new generation interested in words and the power of words and finding their own voice and becoming empowered and working with others. And so I think that's really, it's in some societies it has a different role. I mean, and usually in repressive societies, poetry plays a really important role. But I think in our country, which is so vibrant, and we have so many different cultural and so many different languages and so many different poetic traditions, it's really an incredibly kind of powerful new art form, this collective composition.
I want to talk about America broadly, but I'd like to start out a little bit more specific. For example, what's the capital of North Dakota?
I know that.
I think you know.
I do know.
You know.
Can you think of 5 capitals beginning with A?
5 capitals beginning with A? Well, first of all, you said Bismarck, which is correct. We're going to grade that. That's correct. It's very rare that people get that.
What's the capital of Pennsylvania?
Capitals, it's got to be Allentown, right? I don't know. Philadelphia? I actually memorized all 50 state capitals when I was in 3rd grade, but I've forgotten most of them.
Including the 5 that begin with A.
No, I don't know. Are there really 5 that begin with A?
Yes, there are. And I know this because when we used to drive around in the car a lot, and the Secret Service man who was with us for our whole childhood, that was one of the questions that was one of his questions to keep us quiet. And so I still remember them. Keep us thinking.
Those.
And the other one was, who hit a home run off Sandy Koufax and caught a touchdown pass from Y.A. Tittle?
It's got to be Jim Brown.
Kept him quiet.
Jim Brown, right? No, I don't know. Ooh.
I'm not telling you now. You haven't even got the capitals that begin with A. I'm definitely not giving you the
Let me just say, I'm not getting paid enough
the
for
hardest
this.
question, sports trivia question.
So, who hit a home run off
anyone in here knows it,
Sandy
just
Koufax?
raise your hand.
Yeah,
It's okay, you can think about it. We can go on. We can go on.
Yastrzemski, Ted Williams, yeah, all right. So you will tell us eventually?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's more fun for maybe there's somebody in here who really loves sports.
Well, they're just going to look on their phones. They're cheating.
And they
You can't look
do
on your
that.
phone.
They wouldn't cheat.
You can't
We're
look on your
Judson,
phone.
Okay?
Oh, you know what? You're right. You're right. That's right. She's right. All right, I think we're going to have to...
Okay, well, his name is Alvin Dark.
Alvin Dork?
Dark.
Dark? Alvin Dark. What? Yeah, isn't that
We
great?
learned something.
This is the first world leaders guest who stumped the crowd. Unbelievable. All right, I really did want to talk about America more broadly than what is the capital of South North Dakota. So let me ask you, and I don't know if you have an answer for this, but you know, when somebody talks about America, what does America mean to you? What is America? I've written a book on the subject. I've written a book on the subject. I really have. I gave it a lot of thought when I wrote this book, and I was mesmerized by my own brilliance. No, I was mesmerized by the idea when it finally began to occur to me what America is and why it is exceptional, because it's an idea and because it's a nation that exists for others, really. It's an extraordinary thing. But because your father was such a vocal patriot and your family has served the country, I guess I do want to know what America means to you as a concept. You know, and I don't mean specifically today, but generally.
Well, certainly it's something that I obviously have always been. I really feel that we are the luckiest. I mean, we are so incredibly fortunate to be American. Living here, being born here, and the more you live in other places, the more you see how indispensable this country is, and when you see our values sort of being put into action to help others, whether it's to rebuild countries, to the Peace Corps, whatever. It's really something that I think does inspire me to want to give back or to work as hard as I can to be worthy of that sacrifice and legacy that has gone before us, because I think that this is going to take a big commitment always, and we don't have we really have a set of documents and promises, and so we can't take this for granted and think that it's easy to do that because we're living it, but it's really something that requires, I think, each of us to give some of our time and some of our thought and effort to participate, to become active citizens, to think about the kind of future that we want and what we're doing to help create it. And that doesn't mean that everybody has to be acting on a national scale. And but I think one of the things I saw in Japan just too was that how vibrant our kind of NGO and community-based organizations, how that sector is really something that I think is incredibly unique to America. And so I know there's people here who work, I met people who work to help victims of domestic violence, people who work in education, faith, based organizations, and all of that, I think, contributes to what makes this country so special. So it's just an infinite amount of energy and passion and caring, but I think that our democracy is something that's really precious, and we should really treat it that way.
Well, I think that's right, and I think it's a biblical idea, since Judson is a Christian college. The idea that God blesses us so that we will be a blessing. And when I hear you talk about your grandmother quizzing you on the Pilgrims and things, this country has been so dramatically blessed, not least with the idea that we're supposed to do something with the blessing. In other words, it's not just for us, but that we really are meant to use our wealth and all that we have, our freedoms, for others. It's kind of funny when I hear about, whether it's Google or today the NBA, but putting profits above the idea of freedom. It just seems to me that we're living in a generation where a lot of people have forgotten how beautiful it is to be free and how so many people long to be free, and forget that because they're free, they have an obligation to uphold the idea of freedom and not just, to take a check or something like that. So I do think that it's a central idea of what it means to be an American, and I just want to say that it's really beautiful to hear you articulate how your family and now you see that and have lived it out. And my final question is, can you forgive me? Quick yes or no answer. Ambassador Caroline Kennedy, really, it's just been a joy to have a conversation with you. I hope the folks here got half as much out of it as I did. And on behalf of Judson and everyone here, I want to say thank you very much.